Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, your host, and today we're going to do a deep dive into a topic that is super important for better communication.
Okay.
Active listening. We've got a true expert in communication with us today. Sarah, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Mike. Happy to be here.
Now, I think we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to someone and you just know they're not really listening.
Yeah.
Like their eyes are glazed over or they're just waiting to jump in with their response before you've even finished your thought. It's like talking to a brick wall. But, active listening, it's about way more than just hearing the words.
Right.
It's about really understanding the speaker's full message, their feelings, their intentions, even the stuff they're not saying. So, Sarah, can you break that down for us a bit? What is active listening and why is it so important?
You're spot on, Mike. It's a whole different thing than just passively listening to words. It's about really being present and engaged with the person who's talking, not just waiting for your chance to jump in. It's about getting their message on all those levels. The words, of course, but also the emotions behind them, their body language, even their unspoken intentions. Like you're tuning into their whole being, not just their words. And it's so important for so many reasons, Mike. For one thing, it's like the foundation of any strong relationship, When you actually practice active listening, you build that trust and respect with the other person. It shows them that you genuinely care about what they have to say, and you're really trying to understand their point of view. And that can make a huge difference, avoiding conflicts, building a good connection, and making your relationships with the people around you even stronger.
It really can. And it's not just personal relationships either, right?
No, not at all.
It's super important for work, too. Think about it. When you're in a meeting or you're negotiating something or even just pitching an idea to your boss, being a good listener can really set you apart. It helps you get the information you need, understand everyone's point of view, and respond thoughtfully. Those are all such key skills for leadership and collaboration and, just being good at solving problems.
For sure. And it's funny because a lot of people just assume that listening is something we do naturally.
Yeah.
But being an active listener, it's a skill, something you can actually work on and get better at. It's like learning a language or playing a musical instrument. The more you practice, the better you get.
It's so true. And I remember when I first learned about active listening, I was blown away by this stat. Did you know that the average person only remembers like 25% what they hear after 2 months?
Really?
75% just goes in one ear and out the other.
Wow, that's wild. But it makes sense, right? When we really engage with information, when we consciously make that effort to listen and process it, our brains hold on to it better. Active listening techniques actually activate more areas of our brains.
Oh, interesting.
Which helps with memory and understanding. It's like giving your brain a workout. And we're not just talking about words here either. Remember, body language and all those nonverbal cues are a huge part of communication. Some research even suggests that over 65% of what we communicate isn't even spoken.
Wow. So if most of what we're communicating isn't even in the words themselves, active listening has to be about way more than just what we hear.
Exactly.
You've got to pay attention to the speaker's whole presence, their energy, everything.
Exactly. We need to be tuned in to all those subtle signals the speaker is giving us, both verbal and nonverbal. Their facial expressions, tone of voice, posture, even how they're using their hands. All those things give us these little insights into what they're really feeling and what they mean. It's like reading between the lines of the conversation.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do this? How do we get better at active listening? What are some things we can do?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The good news is anyone can improve their active listening skills. It's about being intentional about it and practicing.
Yeah.
And like any skill, the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Right.
So let's dive into some of those essential techniques.
Okay, lay it on us. What are your top tips for becoming a better active listener?
Okay, so first off, paying attention. It might seem obvious, but in this world of ours with distractions everywhere, it's actually harder than it sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Put your phone away, turn off those notifications. Find a quiet spot if you can. Make eye contact with the person who's talking and focus on what they're saying. Don't let your mind drift off and try to resist the urge to interrupt or plan what you're going to say next while they're still talking.
Okay, so put the phone down, close the laptop, be present in the moment. I think we could all use a reminder about that sometimes.
Definitely. Next up is showing that you're engaged. It's not enough to just be there.
Yeah.
You have to show the speaker that you're really listening and that you care what they have to say.
Right.
Nod your head, smile at the right moments, use little verbal cues like, or icy to keep them going. It just lets them know you're with them and interested in what they're saying.
So it's like giving them little signals that you're on the same page.
Exactly. Those tiny cues make all the difference. And then there's providing feedback. This is where we take our listening to the next level. To make sure you're really understanding the speaker's message, try putting what you've heard into your own words.
Okay.
Say something like, so what you're saying is, or it sounds like you feel. This not only shows them you're paying attention, but also gives them a chance to make sure you've got it right.
So paraphrasing is like hitting the save button, making sure you've stored the information correctly.
Exactly. It helps both of you make sure you're on the same page. Another great technique is asking open-ended questions. This is about going beyond those simple yes or no questions and really inviting the speaker to go deeper into their thoughts and feelings. Try things like, can you tell me more about that? Or how did that make you feel? These types of questions show real interest and encourage the speaker to open up more.
Those open-ended questions are so important. It gives them the space to really unpack everything instead of just giving a surface-level response.
Absolutely. And maybe the most important one of all is withholding judgment. This means fighting that urge to jump in with solutions or force your opinions on them or give advice they didn't ask for. It's about making a safe space where they can share their thoughts and feelings without being judged or criticized. Sometimes people just need to vent or process their emotions, and the best thing you can do is just listen without trying to fix anything.
That is a big one.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to jump in with advice, especially when we care about the person who's talking.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best thing we can do is just listen with empathy and understanding.
Right.
Without judging. It's about truly seeing things from their perspective, even if we don't necessarily agree with them.
That's it. And that's often where people struggle, especially if they naturally like to problem solve or give advice.
Yeah.
But learning to hold back and just listen without judgment is one of the most valuable gifts you can give someone.
You're so right about that, Sarah. And I think this leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive. I'd love to hear an example of how this works in a real conversation.
Yeah.
Like, how do these techniques actually play out?
Absolutely. I'm happy to share an example. So picture this. Two friends, Lisa and Jody. Lisa's had a fight with her sister, and she's really upset.
Okay.
She calls Jody to talk about it. So Jody's going to use her active listening skills to be there for her friend.
Okay. I can picture this. Lisa's on the phone needing to vent about this family drama, and Jody's there to listen. What happens next?
So imagine Lisa says something like, I just had this huge fight with my sister and I'm so upset. She just blew me off when I tried to talk to her about planning our parents' anniversary party, and now I feel terrible.
Okay, so Lisa is clearly hurt and frustrated. It's Jody's time to shine as an active listener.
Exactly. Instead of jumping in with advice or opinions, Jody starts by simply acknowledging how Lisa's feeling. She might say something like, wow, that sounds really rough. You must be feeling so hurt and angry right now.
Okay, so right away, Jody is showing empathy and validating Lisa's feelings. She's not dismissing the situation or jumping to solutions. She's just letting Lisa know that she hears her and understands.
Yes, exactly. And that's so important. To encourage Lisa to share more, Jody then asks an open-ended question like, can you tell me more about what happened?
Okay.
This gives Lisa the space to explain everything in her own words and work through those emotions.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so tempting to jump in with our own thoughts and advice.
Yeah.
But sometimes the best thing we can do is create that space for the other person to tell their story.
You're spot on. And as Lisa's talking, Jody continues to show that she's engaged by making eye contact, nodding, and using those little verbal cues like, and I see to show she's following along.
Right.
These cues are so small, but so important. They show Lisa that Jody's present and really listening, even though she's not saying much. They create a sense of connection and support that's crucial in these kinds of conversations. Now, to make sure she's really understanding everything correctly, Jody uses paraphrasing. She might say something like, so it sounds like you're feeling hurt because your sister didn't seem interested in your ideas for the party, and it made you feel like your input wasn't valued.
Perfect. That's paraphrasing in action. It not only shows Lisa that Jody's listening, but it also gives Lisa a chance to correct Jody if she's missed something or misunderstood. This back and forth makes sure they're both on the same page.
Exactly. And that's a good place to take a pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground already. From what active listening is to why it's so important to some of those essential techniques and even how they look in a real conversation.
Yeah, we have.
But we're just getting started. In the next part, we'll dive even deeper into the ins and outs of active listening. We'll explore some more advanced techniques and tackle some of the challenges that come up in those real-world conversations. Can't
wait to hear more. Stay tuned for part 2 of our active listening adventure. Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We're picking up right where we left off, exploring the fascinating world of active listening with our expert, Sarah.
Right.
In part one, we talked about what active listening is, why it's so important, but now I'm really keen to get into the how.
Okay.
Sarah, what are some more practical tips and techniques that we can use to really sharpen our listening skills and make those conversations we have every day more meaningful and have more impact?
You're absolutely right, Mike. Knowing the theory is great, but putting it into practice is where the real magic happens. So let's jump right into some more of those actionable strategies that you can start using today. One tip that might sound a bit counterintuitive at first is this. Don't just listen with your ears, listen with your whole body.
Okay.
What I mean by that is pay attention to your posture, your facial expressions, even your breathing. When you're truly engaged in a conversation, your body naturally reflects that. You tend to lean forward slightly, you make eye contact, and your facial expressions mirror the speaker's emotions.
But on the other hand, if you're bored or distracted, you might slouch across your arms or avoid eye contact. It's like your body is speaking a language of its own, and you want to make sure you're sending the right message.
That's such a great point. It's like we're sending these nonverbal signals all the time, whether we realize it or not. So we need to be mindful of our body language and make sure it's aligned with our intention to be present and engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely. And here's another interesting tip. Try to listen between the lines.
Okay.
Often what people don't say is just as important as what they do say. Pay attention to their tone of voice, their pauses, their body language. Are they hesitant to share certain details? Do they seem to be holding back their true feelings? Tuning into these subtle cues can give you valuable insights into the speaker's underlying emotions and intentions.
So it's almost like we're playing detective.
Yes.
Looking for those little clues in the speaker's behavior and trying to piece together the full story. Precisely. Active listening is about more than just taking words at face value. It's about reading between the lines and understanding the deeper meaning behind the message. And sometimes that means paying attention to what's not being said.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about those times when we're in a conversation with someone and we genuinely don't understand what they're trying to say? Maybe they're using jargon that we're not familiar with, or their explanation is just confusing.
Yeah.
What's the best way to handle those situations without interrupting the flow of the conversation or making the speaker feel like we're not paying attention?
That's a common challenge, and it's important to address it in a way that shows respect for the speaker. Instead of just nodding along and pretending you understand, don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions.
Okay.
You could say something like, "I'm not sure I follow you there. Could you explain that a bit more?" Or, "What do you mean by," and then repeat the specific term or phrase that you didn't understand.
So it's better to just pause for a moment and ask for clarification than to just fake it and risk misunderstanding the whole point of the conversation.
Exactly. It's about being honest about your understanding and taking the time to get on the same page as the speaker. And here's another tip for those moments when you need a little extra help processing what you're hearing. Try silently summarizing the speaker's key points in your own words. This helps solidify your understanding and can also help you formulate thoughtful questions or responses later on.
Okay, so it's like we're creating mental bullet points as we listen, highlighting the most important takeaways from the conversation.
Oh no, it's about actively engaging with the information and making it your own.
Yeah.
Now here's a tip that might seem small, but it can make a big difference in how you're perceived as a listener. Avoid finishing the speaker's sentences, even if you think you know where they're going.
Oh.
It can be tempting to jump in and try to speed things up, but it can also make the speaker feel like you're not really listening or that you're more interested in hearing yourself talk.
Oh, I am so guilty of this. Sometimes I think I do it because I'm eager to show that I'm following along and that I understand what they're saying, but I can definitely see how it could backfire and make the speaker feel rushed or cut off.
It's a common mistake, but it's definitely something to be mindful of. When you resist that urge to finish someone's sentence, you're giving them the space to express themselves fully and at their own pace, and that can make a world of difference in how heard and respected they feel.
Okay, that's a great reminder. Now, I'm curious about something. We've talked a lot about the verbal aspects of active listening, but what about the nonverbal side of things? How can we use our body language to show that we're truly listening and engaged?
Excellent question, Mike. Nonverbal communication is just as important as verbal communication, if not more so. It's often the key to building trust, conveying empathy, and creating a sense of connection with the speaker. So let's dive into some specific nonverbal techniques that can elevate your active listening game.
Awesome. I'm ready to take notes.
All right, here's a simple but powerful one. Make eye contact with the speaker. This shows that you're focused on them and interested in what they have to say. But a word of caution, don't stare them down. That can feel intimidating and unnatural.
Yeah.
Instead, aim for a comfortable and natural level of eye contact that shows you're present without being overbearing.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where we're making eye contact enough to show we're engaged, but not so much that it feels creepy or uncomfortable.
That's a great way to put it. It's about finding that balance that feels authentic and respectful for both of you. Now, here's another important nonverbal cue. Pay attention to your posture. Sit or stand up straight, but avoid being stiff or formal.
Okay.
Leaning forward slightly can show that you're interested and engaged, while leaning back can signal disinterest or boredom. And whatever you do, avoid crossing your arms.
Got it.
This can create a physical barrier between you and the speaker and make you seem closed off or defensive.
So it's about creating a welcoming and approachable presence with our body language, letting the speaker know that we're open to hearing what they have to say.
Right. It's about creating that sense of safety and trust that allows for open and honest communication. Now, here's a tip that might seem small, but it can actually make a big difference in how you're perceived as a listener. Nod your head occasionally. This simple gesture can go a long way in showing the speaker that you're following along and understanding their message.
Yeah.
It's a nonverbal way of saying, yes, I'm with you, or I hear you.
It's like giving those little head nods of encouragement, like we're cheering the speaker on as they share their thoughts and feelings.
Yes, exactly. It's a subtle but effective way to show that you're present and engaged. And while you're at it, don't forget to smile. A genuine smile can create a warm and inviting atmosphere and make the speaker feel more comfortable and at ease. But again, be authentic. Don't force a smile if it doesn't feel natural. A forced smile can actually have the opposite effect and make you seem insincere or dismissive.
So it's all about being mindful of our body language and making sure it's congruent with our intention to be present, respectful, and engaged in the conversation.
Yes.
It's about sending those nonverbal signals that create a sense of connection and trust with the speaker.
You got it, Mike. It's about using our whole selves to listen, not just our ears. Now let's move on to a topic that's often misunderstood when it comes to active listening note-taking.
Okay.
Some people believe that taking notes is a sign of disrespect, or that it means you're not truly listening to the speaker. But that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. The idea that if you're busy scribbling away in your notebook, you must not be fully present in the conversation.
Right. But here's the thing. Taking notes can actually be a very effective way to enhance your active listening skills. If you're someone who struggles to remember details, taking notes can help you stay focused and retain information more effectively.
So it's like creating a written record of the conversation that we can refer back to later, almost like a mental map of the key points and takeaways.
Precisely. And it can be especially helpful in situations where you need to remember specific details, like in a meeting or a lecture. Now, of course, there's a right way and a wrong way to take notes while still being an active listener.
Right.
The key is to do it in a way that doesn't distract the speaker or make them feel like you're not fully present.
Okay, so how do we strike that balance?
Yeah.
How do we take notes effectively without sacrificing our active listening presence?
Here are a few tips. First, make sure you have the speaker's permission before you start taking notes. A simple, would it be all right if I jot down a few notes, can go a long way in showing respect and consideration. Second, don't try to write down every single word the speaker says. Instead, focus on capturing the key points, main ideas, and any action items or follow-up tasks. And third, make sure your note-taking doesn't interfere with your ability to make eye contact, nod, and use other nonverbal cues to show that you're listening. If you find yourself getting too caught up in writing, pause for a moment, look up at the speaker, and make sure you're still connected.
So it's about being strategic and selective with our note-taking, making sure it's enhancing our listening experience rather than detracting from it.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between capturing the essential information and maintaining that all-important human connection with the speaker.
Well said, Sarah. I think these note-taking tips are incredibly helpful. But before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the idea of listening between the lines. Can you give us some more specific examples of what kinds of nonverbal cues we should be paying attention to and what they might mean?
Absolutely, Mike. It's like learning a secret code, decoding those subtle signals that people send through their body language and tone of voice. Let's break down some of the most common nonverbal cues and what they might reveal about the speaker's true feelings and intentions.
Okay, ready to crack the code.
Yeah.
What should we be looking for?
First up, we have eye contact. As we mentioned earlier, good eye contact is a sign of engagement and interest. But there's more to it than that. If someone is making strong, steady eye contact, it can also convey confidence, assertiveness, or even a desire to connect on a deeper level.
So strong eye contact can be a good thing. But what about the opposite? What if someone is avoiding eye contact altogether?
That's where things get a little more nuanced. Avoiding eye contact can signal a range of emotions, from shyness or nervousness to discomfort or even dishonesty. It's important to consider the context of the conversation and the speaker's overall demeanor to get a more accurate read on their true feelings.
Okay, so we need to be detectives using all the clues at our disposal to decipher the meaning behind the speaker's nonverbal cues.
Exactly. It's about being attuned to the subtleties of human behavior and understanding that there's not always a one-to-one correspondence between a specific cue and a specific emotion.
Got it. So what other nonverbal cues should we be paying attention to?
Let's talk about facial expressions. These are incredibly powerful indicators of emotion. A genuine smile can convey happiness, warmth, and approachability. A furrowed brow can signal confusion or concern, and a clenched jaw can betray anger or frustration.
So it's about paying attention to those micro expressions, those fleeting facial movements that can reveal a lot about what someone is truly feeling, even if they're trying to mask it.
You're exactly right. Our faces often betray our true emotions, even when we're trying to keep them hidden. And that's why it's so important to be attuned to those subtle facial cues.
Okay, so eye contact and facial expressions, check. What else should we be noticing?
Next up, we have tone of voice. This can be a powerful indicator of emotion and intention. A soft, gentle tone can convey empathy and understanding. A loud, forceful tone can signal dominance or aggression. And a wavering, uncertain tone can betray nervousness or lack of confidence.
So it's not just what people say, it's how they say it. The tone of voice can add layers of meaning to their words.
Precisely. It's like the soundtrack to a movie. It sets the mood and helps us interpret the action.
Okay, I'm getting the hang of this nonverbal decoding. What other clues should we be on the lookout for?
Let's talk about body language. This includes things like posture gestures and even the way someone is positioned in relation to you. For example, if someone is leaning in towards you, it generally signals interest and engagement. If they're leaning away or turning their body away from you, it could indicate disinterest, discomfort, or even a desire to end the conversation.
So it's about noticing those subtle shifts in body position and how they reflect the speaker's level of comfort and engagement in the conversation.
Exactly. And don't forget about gestures. These can be incredibly expressive and revealing. Open, expansive gestures can convey confidence, enthusiasm, or a desire to connect. Closed, restrictive gestures can signal defensiveness, anxiety, or even dishonesty.
So it's like our bodies are speaking a language of their own, and we need to learn how to interpret those nonverbal signals.
That's a great way to put it, Mike. It's about becoming fluent in the language of body language and understanding that it can often tell us more about a person's true feelings and intentions than their words alone.
This has been incredibly eye-opening, Sarah. I'm starting to see everyday conversations in a whole new light. Like there's this whole hidden layer of meaning that I've been missing out on. It's like upgrading our communication software, going from a basic version to the premium all-inclusive package.
I love that analogy, Mike. It's about expanding our awareness and becoming more attuned to the nuances of human interaction.
Well, Sarah, I have to say this deep dive into active listening has been a real game changer for me. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit of strategies for becoming a better listener and communicator.
Right.
But before we wrap up part 2 of our episode, I want to touch on something that I think is incredibly important, especially in today's world.
Okay, Mike, I'm intrigued. What's on your mind?
We live in a time where it feels like everyone is constantly shouting their opinions and trying to get the last word.
Yeah.
It's all about being right, being heard, and winning the argument. In that kind of environment, active listening can feel almost radical.
It can't. It's like swimming against the tide.
Exactly. But I think it's more important now than ever. If we want to bridge the divides between us, build understanding, and have more productive conversations, we need to reclaim the art of active listening.
You're absolutely right, Mike. Active listening is an act of courage in a world that often prioritizes noise over understanding. It's about choosing to listen, even when it's hard, even when we disagree, even when we'd rather just talk.
It's about creating that space for dialogue, for empathy, for genuine connection, even in the midst of all the chaos and noise.
Exactly. It's about remembering that listening is not a passive activity. It's an act of creation. It's about building bridges, fostering understanding, and co-creating a more compassionate and connected world.
Well said, Sarah.
Yep.
On that inspiring note, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into active listening. But don't go anywhere. In part 3, we'll explore the incredible benefits of active listening and how it can transform your relationships, your career, and even your own self-awareness.
Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. We're wrapping up our exploration of active listening with Sarah.
Yeah. In the first 2 parts, we talked about what active listening is, why it's so important, and even got into some practical techniques for in becoming better listeners.
Right.
But now I kind of want to shift gears a little and talk about the impact of active listening.
Yeah.
Like, what are the benefits we can expect to see when we really commit to this and become better listeners?
That's a great point. Mike, active listening isn't just about making other people feel good. Although it does do that, it also has this ripple effect, creating positive changes in our relationships, our work, and even our own self-awareness.
Okay.
Let's start with relationships. What's at the heart of any strong, healthy relationship? It's trust, understanding, and that feeling of being truly heard and seen. That's exactly what active listening does. When you practice active listening, you're basically sending this powerful message to the other person. You matter. Your thoughts and feelings are important to me. I'm here to listen without judging and to understand your perspective.
Yeah, it's like giving someone the gift of your undivided attention, which is so rare these days.
Yeah, it really is. It's about making the other person feel like they're the only person in the room, like their voice truly matters. And that creates this feeling of safety, connection, and intimacy that's essential for any strong relationship.
Right.
Whether it's with a partner, a family member, a friend, or even a colleague.
So active listening is like relationship super glue. It helps those bonds become stronger and more resilient. But I'm also curious about the impact of active listening on our professional lives. I know we touched on this a bit earlier, but can you talk more about how being a good listener can actually help us in our careers?
Of course. Active listening helps us build rapport, gather information effectively, and understand different perspectives. These are all such essential skills for effective leadership collaboration and problem solving. All things that are super valuable in any workplace.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you're truly listening to your colleagues, your clients, your boss, you're picking up on valuable insights that you might have missed otherwise. You're building trust and understanding, and you're showing them that you value their input. And that can make a big difference in how you're seen as a colleague, a team member, a leader.
So it's not just some fluffy, soft skill. It's like a secret weapon for success at work.
Exactly. And the best part, active listening is a skill that can be learned and developed just like anything else. It takes practice and intention, but the rewards are huge.
Totally. I'm sold on this.
Okay.
But, we've talked about how active listening benefits our relationships with other people. But what about our relationship with ourselves?
Oh, that's interesting.
Does active listening have an impact on our own self-awareness and personal growth?
That's a great question, Mike. And it's something that often gets overlooked. Active listening can be a really powerful tool for self-discovery and personal growth. Think about it. When we truly listen to others, we're exposed to different perspectives, different ways of thinking and feeling. We start to see the world through their eyes, and that can broaden our own understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own beliefs and assumptions and seeing them reflected back at us through the eyes of other people.
Exactly. We might realize that our perspective isn't the only valid one, that there are other ways of seeing things. And that can be incredibly liberating and eye-opening.
I can see that. By listening to others, we're not just learning about them, but we're also learning about ourselves.
Yes. And here's another way active listening helps with self-awareness. When we truly listen to others, we're also tuning into our own internal reactions. We're noticing how their words make us feel, what thoughts and emotions they trigger in us. And that helps us become more aware of our own emotional landscape, noticing those subtle shifts in our mood and how we're responding to the world around us.
It sounds like active listening isn't just about listening to other people, it's also about listening to ourselves. Cultivating that inner awareness that allows us to grow and evolve and become the best versions of ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Mike, active listening is a journey of self-discovery, both in terms of understanding the world around us and understanding our own inner world.
Well, Sarah, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of active listening. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of just how powerful this skill is and how it can really transform our lives in so many ways.
Me too, Mike. It's been such a pleasure exploring this with you, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to embark on their own active listening journeys.
I'm sure they are, Sarah. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into active listening. We hope you learned some valuable tips and techniques that you can start using today to improve your communication, strengthen your relationships, and maybe even boost your career success. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more communication tips and tricks. Thanks for tuning in.